Well, hello everyone. Steve Adams here with Embracing Brokenness Ministries. It's good to see you back again. As we announced last week, we were going to do things a little bit different here in 2019. So for those of you who did not hear, you're seeing video for probably the first time. Many of you are back, but we are also providing content on a number of different platforms, audio podcast platforms like Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. So there's places that you may be able to find this when it's more convenient, where you're in your car and you want to listen in, or if you can grab the video and you can take a look, you get to look at my smiling face. Here I am in this high-tech studio in my home office with my iPhone XS and really lousy audio. But we're going to improve on that. So just hang with us. More important for us to just bring some things to you a little different here this time of the year. So thanks for joining us. I'll jump right in. For those of you who read the blog last week, I have a topic that I want to jump into a little bit here. The title of it was called Living the Anxious Life. Now, that probably invokes a lot of different ideas for you. But if you're like me, even after 40 some years as a Christ follower, I still find myself living a lot of anxious days in my life. And so I want to try to capture that concept a little differently and have you think about it from a different place. I'm doing something here that I started probably about maybe 6, 8, 10 weeks ago. And it's a 10-month program that, for those of you who are familiar with Terry Wardle and Healing Care Ministries, and I'd highly recommend you check it out. It's a program that they designed for people that want to go deeper in their healing journey. And so it's called Rooted. I'm sure you can Google it and find it on their website. But during the course of last week or the week before, when we were covering some new territory, there was a concept tossed out to us. And it was this idea of abiding in God's provision, and that provision was God providing himself. And I thought, well, okay, that's kind of interesting, sort of a broad-ranging concept, God providing himself for his provision. And I guess that's true, but they went on to talk a little bit about the importance of how we wait for God. Or in their case, challenged me with this thinking of waiting with him as opposed to waiting for him. And that is a new idea for me when I think a little bit about what might be a good metaphor for that, or symbolic for that. I think of a cleft in the rock, and this is something's used a lot, and I think there's even songs about it in the faith, but think about this place where you can sort of hunker down. You got in this cleft of the rock, and you just look at it as God's presence around you. And so you have this very comfortable, well, it may not be comfortable. What I said, it'd be nice if there was a little memory foam that lined it, So when we sit in there in these really difficult places and ask God to protect us, that we have kind of a comfortable spot to sit in. But that's not really realistic, is it? Those surfaces in the cleft can be pretty hard sometimes. So what we were talking about in Rooted was this idea of, well, what would it look like if we didn't think as much about waiting for God? Because that's sort of to me, that's a futuristic perspective. Waiting with him means it's present in this moment. And a lot of times our prayers are, well, Lord, can you make this happen in my life? Or this relationship is not working the way I'd hope. Can you help me change things in that? Or, I don't know about this new home. I'm waiting for it, but could you bring it to pass if it's meant to be? Or we talk about God opening and closing doors in the future and what that looks like. But what if we were to take a different approach to the waiting? What if we just said, God, I'm okay to wait with you. It's a whole different place. It's sort of a being, a being of today, not in the future, not in the past, but just with you. I think of, times when I really want to get alone and get quiet with the Lord and just meditate on his goodness, I kind of transposed myself to this place that I absolutely love. And if you stick with us long enough, you'll hear about it on the beach in Stone Harbor, New Jersey in particular. And there's this one spot that just love to sit in the sand and look out to the ocean. And it's calm, it's quiet, it's beautiful. And I just picture Jesus sitting next to me, you know, and it just has this visual of a conversation we might have. And that's kind of a waiting with perspective, isn't it? Just put him next to you. And you're just going to walk this life out with him, not waiting for him to do something. So think about this. I'm going to read a little bit from the Passion Translation. And I love this translation. A lot of times it's more understandable, more heartfelt. And so this idea of what love looks like for God to invade our world and us to sit patiently with him, I love the picture that this gives us, and it's in Ephesians 3:17. So let me read it. By constantly using our faith, the life of Christ will be released deep inside us, and the resting place of his love will become the very source and root of our lives. So this idea of waiting with is a place of rest. And if we can get our head around this, and I know that's not easy sometimes because, you know, we're constantly moving. There's just stuff to do all the time. And for me, you know, about a year and a half ago, I was launching a new business venture, and it was an outcropping of a business that I closed down in 2017 that I was in for 20 years. It was I was in manufacturing, food manufacturing, and then retail. And I sold off a portion of the manufacturing business and held on to the retail business. And, you know, I mean, if any of you, you know, I just saw this morning, I mean, just retail, and I read LinkedIn and the business section of that, and part of it is talking about the changes in the retail environment. And for many of you, you know what it looks like since Amazon's come on the scene. So you have Sears, who's struggling. Now JCPenney's looking at shuttering some stores, and it's just a different world, right? We live in from retail. So I closed that business down. I had no choice just by the way things were going. But I launched something new internationally, and I was hoping to take some of the products, and these are pickles, jams, jellies, relishes, salsas, maybe some dry mixes, and offer that on an international scale to places that you would think were less likely for that to happen. But God led me in a direction that I thought very clearly, like, this is him. And there is no question about it that this is a direction we need to go. And something new was birthed out of something old that was pretty much dying. And I love the look of that and the feel of that. Because, you know, there's just always opportunities for us to generate something new from something old. If we're willing to change, and we're willing to look to the future, and we're willing to be available for what God wants for us, just the greatest opportunities exist. So waiting for God in some ways to get this business off the ground, you know, traveling, I went to Panama, which is where we have one distributor, and we had this huge, you know, launch of this distributor agreement that I had, and, you know, film and cameras and interviews and this crazy way of looking at things that I thought, man, this is going to go, it's going to go. And Colleen and I both believed that was going to be the means by which we funded this ministry, actually, Embracing Brokenness Ministries. I mean, it started with us writing a book, started that almost a year ago, and it's a labor that has been challenging, but it's also been rewarding. You know, it's kind of birthed this from it. But this idea, I was convinced, like, this is the way it was going to go. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I mean, I was disappointed. It was hard, you know, when things didn't happen in the time that I expected it to happen. But when I got a hold of this idea of what it meant to be waiting not for God to do something, even if it looks like that's the direction it's going in, waiting with him is a much more peaceful place to live. You know, you relax in that cleft of the rock. You sit there and go, okay, God, I'm okay. Like, the storms might be flying around me, and I don't understand what I'm looking at right now, but I do know that you have my best interest at heart. You know, all things work together for the good of those that love God. And in my case, I love God. And he knows it. I want to do what he's called me to do. And even though it may look a little different than I thought, you know, I look back on this time and I now understand why the delay. I mean, this last year and a half has been tremendous growth for me in my healing journey. You know, I've been able to volunteer at Water Street Mission, where my wife is on the leadership team, get to meet people in their most vulnerable state. And what I've loved about that experience, though, is it's humbled me. It showed me that, you know, God can use any one of us at any given time, but there are people's lives out there that are just a disaster. You know, but that could be me. But I was able to sit and just understand and minister and talk to and really get my head around this whole idea of what brokenness really looks like. You know, I had my version of it, but then I got to see people who really were struggling with their version of it. Well, I would have missed all of that if I wasn't willing. If I would have fought through this process and tried to make something happen on my own, I would have missed all that blessing and missed the opportunity to do what I'm doing right now, which I'm absolutely loving. So think about it in the context of your life. You know, living the anxious life isn't exactly what we signed up for. And we always talk about anxiety and how difficult it is when we're looking to the future. And I, you know, use this a lot to try to put perspective on it. You know, there's two thieves. The two thieves, and they steal our joy, are really simple. There's the regrets of the past, right? And we have plenty of those. And there's the anxiety over what's coming in the future. Well, God doesn't want us to live in that space. You know, he tells us that, you know, sufficient are the troubles of today. We just need to, you know, settle in on what he has for us today, not tomorrow, not yesterday. You know, I talked about that last week on Yesterday's Manna. Maybe there's some change going on in your life. But you got to be okay with this idea of waiting with God, right? You with me? Waiting with God, not for him to absolutely do something that you think he needs to do, or maybe you're trying to guess at what that looks like. So think about that in your own life. Just ponder the question, you know, what does it look like for me to just sit in a different posture of waiting with, not waiting for. So yeah, take some of the time yourself and go to a place in your mind, or just sit quietly and meditate on the concept that I'm tossing out today. And then leave us some comments. Shoot us an email. Go to our website at embracingbrokenness.org. You can get more content there on the blogs. You get links to the video and audio, but you can also go to our YouTube channel, watch this, but just somehow communicate. I'd love to hear from you. Like, what difference is it making in your life when you start thinking about waiting with God rather than for God? You know, not living the anxious life. There's plenty of anxiety in the world. Let's us neutralize that in our own life and just live differently. So God bless you guys. Hope to see you again soon, and we'll reconvene next round, either on this video platform or an audio platform. But I want to just bless you today. Amen.